Hey there, Bolt fam. Welcome to Chargers Talk 4630. I'm your host, Garrett Elsasser, joined by my friend, Kyle D. Dominican Tanio. No.
Nice. That was good. You nailed it.
Okay. All right.
I was just sprinkling on some Parmesan, man.
Yeah, there you go. I respect it. If this is your first time joining us, we welcome you and we ask you that you please hit that like and subscribe button down below. Subscribe does not mean that you pay anything. It is a free podcast. All you do is get some notifications from whatever platform you're listening on, especially YouTube. And you will get all our training camp content and in-season content that's going to be coming your way this season. You can also listen to us on the road or at work or even on your lunch break on Spotify, Pandora, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Apple Music, and TuneIn Radio. And if you have any comments, you can hit us up down below or hit us up on X. You can hit me up, Garrett at gman7887 or Kyle at the Kyle D. And that is it. Once again, we welcome you to wherever you're watching or listening. And let's get this show on the road. Kyle, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing, Garrett?
I'm doing well. And as most of you have noticed, all of you probably, Stacey is not here. Word on the street is that he went a little too hard in OTAs. And so he's going to take a couple of weeks. No, seriously though, he's taking some time. He's got some family stuff going on. So I think that he's in our thoughts and prayers, and so is his family. We'll see him back in a couple of weeks.
A little bit of rest, a little bit of recovery. I'm sure he'll be back in time for training camp. No issues at all there. Until then, exactly. The boys pulled me off the practice squad. So here I am, activated, filling in, and we'll keep things rolling, man.
Exactly. That's one elevation. You get two more elevations, you're on the roster, man. That's how it works.
There you go, man. There you go. Signed.
Yeah, exactly. First things first, I want to talk about our redheaded friend on the defensive line, Scott Matlock, the 6th-round pick from Boise State. Jim Harbaugh can't seem to get enough of this guy. Kyle, what you got on this guy?
You probably recognize him, Garrett, because I think he looks like a lot of the people you're running around with right now, right? Like kind of like a Viking lord over there.
Yeah.
Straight out of Iceland or Norway or Sweden or anything.
Exactly.
He is I was so excited when I was riding with Bolts from the Blue and we drafted him and I looked into him. I can't say I was excited when we drafted him because I didn't know who he was. I didn't know anything about him. And then you looked into him, and in his time at Boise State, he was really a guy that led that squad. The coaches couldn't speak highly enough about him. A really selfless player that regularly took on double or sometimes even triple teams because he was that dominant on the line for them. And was also tasked with a bunch of extra stuff too, kind of like a JJ Watt-esque, light guy for his squad when they needed an impact guy to come in on offense and be that extra lineman or tight end at the edge of the line. He would go out there and could catch a touchdown for him. I think he had 2 in his career. He's just a really versatile guy, versatile piece that plays with a really, really high motor, and just like Jim Harbaugh, loves football. So he's somebody I'm definitely high on. We wrote about him at Stormcloud, kind of covering how Jim was crushing on this dude. If you look at the guys that Jim has been shouting out, it's been a lot of the leaders on the team. He's given Herbert love, of course, Slater, Mack, Bosa, Derwin, and he gives all these guys love. And then he just throws Scott Matlock into that group. And you're kind of like, wait a minute, like what's Scotty doing that's made him go from what he was with Staley, which was, he didn't really get on the field until Gift took over, to now Jim is like grouping him in with in the same breath as the elites on this team. So Garrett, looking into him, what do you think his kind of outlook and projection is for this year?
So high hopes, I think we have high hopes for everybody on this roster right now. I think it's just new beginnings kind of mentality. Everyone's got a clean slate. I love stories. I love backstories. I love to see what molded the man kind of thing. And Bridget Condon with NFL Network had a little bit on him. And she mentioned that he was a foster child. He lost both of his parents before high school. And it's unfortunate as that is, he's kind of taken that and used that as his fuel to play high school football, end up in a small town in Idaho, and using football as like his way to express himself. And to come from such, I don't even want to say humble beginnings, because I feel like that's an understatement, but for him to go through what he went through and to now be on the forefront of this up and coming team, I think it speaks so much to his character and his ability to take something that's bad and handle that adversity and apply that going forward. And to be a leader in the locker room, and in this kind of touted locker room where we have a Herbert, a Khalil Mack, and a Joey Bosa, and a Jim Harbaugh, to notice him, I mean, that speaks for itself.
Totally.
Yeah, and just some of the quotes. I mean, we've all seen the Harbaugh interviews, but he said he's there every day, and Jim Harbaugh loves that TED acronym, right? He's there every day. He also, during that conditioning test, which he smoked, by the way, so he's super fit, but he felt that the grass was a little too soft, and he wasn't able to cut and turn, so he went back and he started patting it down for everyone else getting ready to do their conditioning test. And again, it's actions speaking louder than words. It's easy to go out there and talk the talk, but now he's out there backing it up, and I'm just extremely excited for him.
And if our viewers are wondering why he might improve significantly from last year over this year, he's an example of a player that might just be a better fit in a simplified defensive scheme. With Staley's gap and a half style, way of playing with his defensive fronts, he was asking a lot of his linemen. It took a very special lineman to excel in that situation. And that's why you saw guys like Sebastian Joseph Day come over and not quite do as well as they did with the Rams. I know it was the same system that he was coming from, but they needed a guy like Aaron Donald that could be, in my opinion, that could both penetrate a line quickly, because that gap and a half style scheme does require you to come off the ball hard and quick, but you don't necessarily penetrate through the line. You kind of get just past it, and then you're kind of looking around, waiting for the running back to go to the gap that you've now vacated, kind of setting up a trap for him, and then go across the lineman and get to him. So it requires the quickness and speed that Matlock, like you said, he tested to have, but it's just a really unique way of playing defensive line that, you kind of need a unicorn to do. And I think was one of Staley's biggest weaknesses, was he couldn't get over both not having Aaron Donald, disrupting the middle of the line when he was regularly kind of removing a lineman from the field, so he could bring an extra defensive back, have an extra defensive back in coverage. And he also didn't have a Jalen Ramsey that could basically shut down runs on, the flats on one side, because he was so good against the run as a DB. It's two different things in play that just made it so different. So for Scotty Matlock to both have the simplified version of what a defensive lineman's assignment should be, I think it's really going to capitalize on that athleticism that he does have and tenacity, and let him really, grow and expand in this role, which would be great, because we don't have our defensive line room has been one of those question marks, right? Like, who's going to step up? We've been wondering, like, hey, are they going to bring in Campbell or somebody like that to fill in and bring a little bit of star power and leadership to this room? But it's starting to look like the idea might be, well, let's treat this almost like the wide receiver room, where we don't have too many studs. We just have a bunch of role players or a bunch of guys that are good at specific things, and we're going to be rotation heavy. And if we lose guys, it's going to be okay, because we're going to keep rotating them through. We're going to keep attacking fresh. And if that's kind of the plan, we're okay with it. And we'll just, we'll worry about defensive tackle next year, or maybe Scotty just ends up being an absolute stud and we're set. Who knows?
And I think that's the mentality. It's like a win-win. Either Scotty steps up and we're great, or, this is our first year with a new regime and we just run with what we got. And if it works, awesome. If it doesn't, then we go into the draft and we have our needs.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Everyone's seen the clip, but that Raiders game, we all saw when Justin Herbert got that late hit by Jerry Tillery out of bounds. Mm-hmm. The first person in Jerry's face was Scott Matlock. So he wasn't even in the game, and he came off the sideline and got in Jerry Tillery's face. It's just like that kind of, it's contagious. I was hyped. I was ready to run through the screen.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So I think that, if his talent starts to ascend, he might be a staple in this D line going forward.
Totally.
Yeah. Speaking of D-line, what about the O-line? I know you've been doing some research, some number crunching, and that whole fun stuff. You got a little series on the O-line coming up. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I just did a article with A to Z Sports projecting Rashawn Slater's, and I'll drop these in the in the comments or the description for everyone to check out if they'd like. But projecting what Rashawn Slater's extension might look like. As we know, like he's been through his first 3 years. Now he's extension eligible. They've already exercised his 5th-year option. But, if they want to try to lock him in at a slightly more reasonable amount, they could extend him now the same way the Lions did with Penei Sewell. So that's just something to keep an eye on, I think. It'd be nice to have Slater locked up long-term. I think we're all expecting him to return to that rookie year / first 3 games of 2022 version of him that we saw where he was just dominant. When his sophomore campaign, man, before he got hurt, he had improved on his skill set already. So
he was lights out.
Yeah. And then just freak bicep injury just sucks. But
it's the worst.
Yeah. But last year he did struggle a little bit. When I say struggle, it's to his playing ability. He was still our best lineman out there. But you saw, if you look at PFF, he had a dominant run blocking grade of 88. And before he went down with his injury in 2022, he was over 80 in his rookie year. And then all of a sudden it dropped to 59.5 last year. And we come to find out after watching him and being like, man, he doesn't look as mobile. Is Slater okay? Duke Manyweather confirmed in the offseason, yeah, he had a bum ankle all year, double high ankle sprain. I don't know what double high ankle sprain is. I was like, is that both ankles are toast, or is that 2 sprains on one ankle? How does that work? No idea, but doesn't sound good. So, so I don't know, man. I did write on Stormcloud branching off of that A to Z article, like, okay, knowing that Rashawn Slater's contract is probably going to land based on whether they extend him now or wait till next season to extend him. It's probably going to be in the 28 to just over $30 million a year range.
Rightfully so.
Rightfully so. If they wait till next year, it's because he's going to be pushing for cap share percentage. And with the expanded cap, what Sewell got this year is going to look like a $30 million a year contract. And with Tristan Wirf's extension as well coming, that's probably going to be what gets us over the $30 million mark. And then his camp's going to have some negotiating leverage against us. So there's a little bit of a rush potentially to get him signed, or they decide to wait and see if he stays healthy and can, return to that prior form that we saw. And if he doesn't, it gets a little complicated because you start wondering, okay, is Pipkins here as insurance for that kind of situation? If Slater does get hurt again, does that become a question where they're suddenly willing to let Slater play on that 5th-year option to see if he can prove it next year that he can stay healthy for a whole year? Or if, they might, because, the Ravens did trade Orlando Brown when they had 2 franchise left tackles. Orlando didn't do great moving forward, but they did get a lot of draft capital for him. So it's not something I want to see or predict happening. It's just interesting now that we have Joe and somebody that's willing to be more aggressive with moves. So what do you think, Garrett? What are you expecting out of Slater this year?
I expect his rookie year. I'm in the clouds right now, so you can't tell me nothing negative. Mr. Optimist. But in reality, I think you do have to prepare for a world where maybe it doesn't pan out. Maybe he can't put it together and there's a 5th-year option, or they trade him, or Pipkins is the insurance policy. I mean, as much as I don't want to see it, and we've already had to deal with a Keenan Allen trade that came out of nowhere. That's just something we're not used to seeing as Charger fans. We don't see, I think the last big player that we saw outside of Rivers, not, going to the Colts, was LT, not getting re-signed and going to the Jets, but like a player that we're attached to. Like, we love a Rashawn Slater. Like, we don't want to see him. Keenan Allen was a fan favorite. He's gone. So this new regime is bringing in this, I don't want to say no nonsense, like people are slacking off, but they're very, what is our best product we can put on the field? And they leave the emotion out of it. It is a business at the end of the day. And I think that if Rashawn Slater can stay healthy, he's leaps and bounds better than last year. He's not on 2 bum ankles. And I think he gets to that beginning of 2022 season form where he's solid and he's going to be lights out in the run game. And if that's the case, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, Kamani Badal, they're going to have a heyday back there.
Totally.
Yeah, no, I 100% think that if he's healthy, if he's going and everything's right with him, he's going to be the player that we know that we have for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to draw a parallel to him being injury prone at all, because like we said, he gutted out last year on that ankle sprain, which is super impressive. And
a freak injury with a
that's total freak. Like that's not something that you see reoccur a bunch. It's his legs are in good shape. It's not like it's been the same couple injuries or that keep holding him back, or that he keeps popping a flat or anything like that. He's had 2 separate injuries. Hopefully, this year with Herbert as his strength and conditioning coach, he's unbreakable. And he moves forward with that. But it's interesting as a fan when we're in these doldrum times of between OTAs and training camp to be like, what we're so used to our players dropping off. It's like, okay, what does happen in that situation? Does Harbaugh and Greg Roman, we're used to Staley really harping on continuity, right? And being like, we got to keep as many guys in their place as possible. And if somebody goes down, we'll fill somebody in, and, they'll learn to work with it. But if Slater were to go down, hypothetically, would it not almost be a better point of continuity if they brought out Alt to his natural left tackle side, let Trey Pipkins go to right tackle where he's been playing for the last few years, and let Jamari Sawyer plug back in at right guard? I mean, I know that's a complete shuffle, but I feel like it would only take a week or 2 for those guys to gel at those spots because they've all played there.
You get no rebuttal from me with that, because that makes the most sense. And I genuinely think that's a reason why Pipkins, and this is happening. They get to keep Slater at left because that's where he's strong and confident. And after the down year last year with his ankles, they want him to get back to form. You get Joe Alt, your new toy, on the right side. And if it works out, you're set. And if for whatever reason, whether it's injury or whatever, lack of performance, you can shuffle it all up and work it out. And I think that it's a plan A and a plan B, and both aren't awful. Granted, I want plan A to work. Everyone does. But but at least there's something they can turn to if it declines a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's fun seeing that the Lions in their first season, in their new regime's first season with Dan Campbell, and oh my gosh, I'm forgetting their general manager's name right now, but he's amazing.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I love the guy. I'm just blanking. Go ahead. I see you're looking it up. So if you could save me right there. They did something very similar to us. They drafted a stud lineman in the top 10 picks, and then they drafted a wide receiver that fell to them. Now, they didn't go as high as the second. They went to the 4th for Amon-Ra St. Brown. But they still have that 1-2 combo that when it came time to extend them, they extended they extended Soul early. They're in from the same class, and they already locked him down, and they did so at premier left tackle pricing. They didn't give him this whole, you're a right tackle, so we're going to pay you less. Yeah. Like, no, man, you are a tackle, and if we moved you to the left side, you'd be dominant. So we're not even going to mess around with that. And they made Amon-Ra St. Brown the highest paid receiver. So that you could be looking at the script for the Chargers in 3 years.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Brad Holmes.
That's right. Yeah. And he was in the organization. Like, he worked all his way from the bottom to the top, basically, which is so cool. And you see like that homegrown fan energy from him when he comes on the field and celebrating and high-fiving everybody. Yeah. So that's a dream pairing, man. I love
the Lions are one of those teams that I watch and I'm just like, that's you're just happy for them. Like, there's teams that you don't really like, and then the Lions, you can't not like them, especially, if you got a 0-win season under your belt, it's been pretty tough for you.
Dude, absolutely, man. I did a podcast with The Pride of Detroit guys on SB Nation. Their website is great. It was what I was like striving to be when I was at from the Blue, and what I kind of am hoping the kind of community we can build around Stormcloud. But their fan base, man, too. The Lions fan base is super fun. They're super involved. They do all sorts of fundraisers and really rally behind their players and each other. So I feel a lot of kinship to that, man. I love those.
I love it.
We have a lot of fun, man, on that pod. But awesome, man. Well, let's keep cruising, Garrett. I know you. Yeah. Go ahead. Let's talk training camp or whatever you want, man.
Training camp. I mean, the schedule just came out yesterday, or this week. I don't know. The training camp schedule came out yesterday. The biggest thing that I noted on there is obviously they have the August 4th open practice, and I'm assuming they're going to have a scrimmage with the Rams, which also makes me miss Keenan Allen, because I don't know if you remember from what year was it? Was it 2019 maybe? But they had a big scuffle and someone charged Keenan and he just body slammed him. I'm going to have to look this up, but it was a safety for the Rams, and it's amazing. But the padded practices. So we have the August 4th scrimmage with the Rams. And then we have padded practices July 29th and the 30th, August 1st and 2nd, and August 6th, 7th, and 8th. I know all practices matter, but these are the ones, as the players were even talking about. Bosa was talking about this going up against Joe Alt, was once that helmet hits his chin, what's going to happen, or hits his chest? Like how is everyone going to fare when the pads come on? Yeah. And when these days roll around, I think there's going to be extra attention being paid to these players and seeing how they're reacting.
Definitely. I with the schedule being released, I hope I can make it up to a practice or two and maybe interact with some fellow fans and, maybe if there's meet and greets or anything like that, I'd be stoked. But, being a new dad, there's my Father's Day cup I got.
Oh, look at that.
baby girl.
I love it.
Yeah, we'll see how many I can make it to. I don't know. Maybe when she's a little bit older, I'll be able to bring her. But
I was going to say, does she have a favorite team yet? Are you instilling the Chargers?
Indoctrinated.
Yeah, that's perfect.
She's a Notre Dame fan and a Charger fan. That's how it'll be in this house.
That's perfect. I'm sure Joe Alt approves too. Then. That's good.
Yeah. Joe Alt and Lohi.
Yeah. The Locked On Chargers recently, which shout out to the Locked On podcast. Those guys are awesome. Had Tony Jefferson on for an interview. And I know that I wasn't able to watch it just yet, but you did, and you said it was very awesome. So let's go ahead and hear about that.
I was just really taken aback by Tony Jefferson's ability to just break things down. He is cerebral, man. The way he speaks a lot of things he speaks intention into a lot of things. And he talked about how he was scouting for Baltimore last year, but he was doing in-season scouting, checking out all the teams. So that's going to be interesting seeing how he approaches, getting Derwin and Alohi and himself ready this season, assuming he makes the squad. He's feeling super motivated to get into that 53. Definitely wants to be on the team, wants to play, and says his body's feeling fresh. I always cringe when I hear players say that, because we've heard it so many times and then something happens. But, in the cut-ups that there were of Jefferson, taking some reps and training, he looked really spry, man. And, maybe with him not being in a starting role, the lack of starting reps and play time does help his body continue to recover or not break down. And he's able to be impactful in a rotational role, but man, his leadership ability and the way he talks, you can tell you want that guy in your room. And eventually he did so well with scouting, they actually moved him from in-season to having him scout for their upcoming draft. So I was just really impressed and really excited to have that kind of leadership. And it also makes you kind of bummed that we haven't targeted guys like that in the past. It's man, Tom Telesco, if you would have just learned from how many like guys we just kept stashing away and hoping they'd eventually develop, like a Storm Norton or somebody along those lines. And instead of just hanging on to these guys that, you could stash on the practice squad, they'll probably stay there, and they're not going to get stolen. People rarely swipe from the practice squad, and bring in guys that can help teach up the young guys we have in front of them and be decent, effective backstops if we do have injuries. So I don't know, I know you've looked into Tony Jefferson as a player and done some scouting on him. So what are you thinking, Garrett?
I think that you hit the nail on the head with his brain behind the game, the way he can dissect an offense and the way he cuts up the field in his mind, and he delivers that. And yeah, he's been a journeyman. He's been on the Cardinals, the Ravens, the Niners, back on the Ravens to the Giants, and now us. He has experience. He has seen. There's not an offense you can show him that he hasn't seen, right? Yeah. And so, not that Alohi and Derwin need this, but this is that reinforcement. This is like you said. You said he was a backstop. Like if one of them, God forbid, they go down, we have somebody who's competent, and it's not going to be a supreme drop off to like the JT Woods of the world, who I think is great, but he's got to work on his mechanics. But also, guess what? You got Tony Jefferson there to guide you a little bit. You got three mentors now: Alohi, Derwin, and Tony. So there's not a benefit that is underweighed by him it being bad that he's there. Like I don't see anything that's bad for him to be on this team. It's training camp. It's essentially a free trial run with his $1.21 million 1 year deal. He's got the scheme fit. He knows his defense. I just don't see how it could be a bad thing. And if he makes it 53, it's going to be a great season for our secondary.
Yeah. And a little trick for fans to look out for that might happen with Tony, because he's a perfect candidate for it. Don't be surprised if he doesn't make the 53 in week one, is stashed on the practice squad because of the vested veteran rule. If Tony's on the roster for the week one game, his entire salary becomes guaranteed. So for this year. So there's a very good chance if he's on kind of the bubble with the 53, they might opt to retain one of their UDFA safeties, keep them on the 53 for week one, let Tony go back down to the practice squad just for that 1 week, and then swap them in week two. And that way, if they feel out the season, if Tony does have some issues, if he's kind of on the tertiary, it does need to float between the practice squad and the active roster, they have the flexibility to do that without taking on the cap hit. That is basically what happened with Christian Covington a couple of years ago and Brandon Fajico, which, people didn't really know about at the time and how that worked. And
they're just freaking out every week it happened. They're like, what are we doing?
Well, do you remember, it was one of my biggest pet peeves that Chargers, one of the biggest things I think Chargers social media has screwed up, a group that has done an amazing job. I love our social media team. This was just a rare folly. That they, and I don't know if it really wasn't the social media team. I guess it was more of just the media and outreach in general, how they put Brendan in front of everybody and had him celebrating making the roster, and you see your face there. He's crying he's breaking down, tearing up on camera, talking about how he told his family they've made it and all this stuff. And you're like, I knew about the vested veteran rule back then. I was sitting there like, Brendan, you don't know what's going to happen. Covington's right behind you. They're going to bring him up because he's the more, he was a little bit more of a scheme fit / like could be that backstop. He had a little bit more flexibility in what he could do, where Brendan had that one role that he was very good at it, just really taking on a double team or something like that. But man, that was painful to watch. So anyway, there's a chance that kind of thing happens with Tony, that there's going to be somebody that might be elevated in front of him in week one, and then they slide him back. So just Charger fans, be on the lookout for that. Just because he's not on the roster in week one doesn't mean he won't be moving forward, because he's probably not going to get snatched up by anybody. They do tend to gravitate towards veterans for that kind of like grab, but and stealing from someone's practice squad. But the way that Tony was available for so long going into the summer, anybody could have drafted him and invited him to their camp. Very unlikely that they identify him as somebody that they want to steal from us. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you see that gamesmanship where it's like, oh, well, the Chiefs want to bring in Tony Jefferson to see what's been going on with the Chargers. But then now you're just speculating.
Yeah. I mean, no, I mean, you're not wrong. It's Tom. We're playing an interdivision rival in week 1. So the Raiders could sweep in and try to take them. Tom Telesco might be a little jealous and jaded. So
yeah. It's just so crazy to me to hear Tom Telesco and the Raiders. And it's just, this division is going to be so on fire with Twitter or X this year. I can't. In the lead up to that week 1 game, because we talked about this last time around the pod, like what's going to happen? It's just I'm just excited all over again. The training camp schedule coming out has just got me hyped.
We're probably going to beat them pretty decently. It's my prediction.
Okay, that's we got predictions,
and they're going to keep trying to dunk on us with that 63-point game, and we're still going to be like, dude, we don't care. We got Harbaugh from that.
Different team. Easton Stick was starting, and nothing to take away from him. But it's like we're not at our full potential. Like, if you're going to take that and run home with it, like
so brutal.
It's wild.
Well, anyway, Garrett, we got like time for one more topic. I think. Is there anything else you wanted to cover?
I think we're good in that sense. I wanted to. The rookies are reporting July 16th, and then the vets report a week after, but. Easton Stick said something, and I want to follow up on this. I don't know if you saw it. Did you see his interview that he did on the podcast when he was talking about Jim Harbaugh?
No, I saw that he did an interview, and then I wanted to go back and watch it, but I haven't done it yet.
He said something about Harbaugh mentioning that the quarterbacks were going to go earlier than the vets.
So I did see that on Twitter. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I didn't see if he said a date or whatever, but I just think that's first of all, I was like, is that allowed? I thought this training camp stuff was pretty.
Yeah.
Like, did he just out a coach? He's already going to get fined.
I thought the same thing, man. I have no idea. I mean, maybe there's nothing to prevent players from getting together early, right? We've seen that with quarterbacks and receivers. So if he's just asking them to, get together and link up the day before,
informal, just they're at the park outside of the training camp spot, and they're just watching them. No, I think that's pretty much it, man. I appreciate you so much coming on to the show in a pinch and filling in. And obviously, Stacey, hearts out to you, man. We'll see you in a few weeks. But is there anything that you wanted to send us off with?
No, just other than, this episode will be posted on Chargers Talk 4630's YouTube page, as well as Storm Cloud's page and our landing page for Chargers Talk 4630. So if you have a chance, be sure to come check us out at Storm Cloud and, sign up, join the forum. It's also going to be posted to our forum where you could chat with, the other members of Storm Cloud. And other than that, hit us up in the chat, drop something in the comments that you'd like us to cover or talk about, and we'll be happy to do it. Assuming everything moves forward smoothly, anytime Garrett and Stacey need a fill-in, I'm going to be here. So hopefully, Garrett, you and I are able to link up again next week, do this again. 100%. So anything that our listeners want to chat about or go over, especially if it's contract projection related or anything like that, that's kind of my wheelhouse. So I'm happy to cook something up for your listeners if there's anything they want to see.
When you start talking numbers, I'm like, okay, I listen. I'm like, this is a lot. And I'm sitting here, I'm like crunching numbers into my calculator. I'm like, all right, that checks. But no, I appreciate everybody tuning in. We appreciate everybody tuning in. Check out Storm Cloud. It is fantastic. It's up and coming. Be a part of something great. And as always, make sure you hit like, subscribe. It costs you nothing over here on YouTube or wherever you're watching this. Kyle, again, appreciate you, man. But I think that's it today, huh?
Right on, man. Well, you guys take it easy, bolt up, and we'll see you soon.
All right. From Garrett and Kyle, Chargers Talk 4630, signing off. Y'all have a good week.